A hungry morning. The air in Leo's cramped apartment hung thick with the ghosts of stale coffee and a faint chemical tang, a morning ritual that did little to rouse his appetite. He stretched, a persistent ache blooming in his shoulders, a testament to another night spent hunched over textbooks. His phone's digital display glared 6 a.m., a stark prelude to the early shift awaiting him. Already, his stomach, a more insistent clock, rumbled with a familiar, hollow protest. Barefoot, he padded into the kitchen, the linoleum's chill a sharp contrast. The cupboards, as always, offered a sparse landscape, a half-eaten box of instant oatmeal, a peanut butter jar scraped to its last vestiges, and a solitary packet of ramen. A sigh escaped him, his breath momentarily fogging the already smudged windowpane. Ramen, it was, again. The mere thought of boiling water and a 3-minute wait felt monumental today. He filled a chipped mug from the tap, the microwaves whirring a pathetic counterpoint to his internal monologue about the vital need for actual food. As he stirred the meager contents of the ramen, a sharp rap echoed from the door. His heart jolted. Too early for the landlord, too early for anything good. He peered through the peephole, his breath catching. Anya. In her hand, a small, brown paper bag. He opened the door, a wave of confusion washing over him. Anya, his classmate and fellow survivor of student life, rarely visited. "Hey," she said, her voice soft, a hint of concern in her eyes. I made too many muffins this morning. Thought you might want one." She extended the bag, and the warm, sweet aroma of blueberry and cinnamon enveloped him, an intoxicating bloom that made his mouth water. Leo stared, first at the bag, then at her. "Muffins?" he croaked, his voice a little rough. You came all the way over here for that?" Anya shrugged, a faint blush warming her cheeks. "Well, yeah. I know you've been pulling long hours. And honestly, I always make too many. My grandma's recipe." She pushed the bag closer. "They're still warm." He took the bag, his fingers brushing hers briefly. The muffin's warmth radiated through the paper, a comfort he hadn't realized he craved. He pulled one out, a plump, golden-brown creation studded with blueberries. Taking a bite, the sweet, tender crumb dissolved on his tongue, a burst of flavor that momentarily silenced the gnawing hunger. It was the best thing he'd eaten in days. "Thank you, Anya," he said, his voice thick with genuine gratitude. He met her gaze, and for a moment, the usual academic stress and banter that defined their interactions dissolved, replaced by a quiet understanding. "Seriously. This means a lot." She offered a small, shy smile. "No problem. Just, try to eat something proper later, okay? You look like you're running on fumes." She glanced at the clock on his phone, then back at him. "Don't be late for your shift." With a final nod, she turned and headed down the narrow hallway, leaving Leo in his doorway, the muffin's warmth a surprising comfort against the morning's chill. His stomach still growled, but it was a softer, more hopeful sound now. He had a muffin, a shift, and a sudden, inexplicable feeling that maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be so perpetually empty. The grocery mission. The fluorescent hum of the grocery store was a jarring contrast to the quiet, academic intensity that usually filled Leo's days. His backpack, usually weighed down with textbooks, now sagged with the hollow echo of impending groceries. He clutched the crumpled list, a relic of his roommate's frantic scrawl, and the small, heavy coin purse in his pocket. Each clink was a stark reminder of his current financial predicament. "All right, Leo," he muttered to himself, navigating the labyrinthine aisles. Survival mission. He found the instant noodles first, a shimmering wall of artificial flavor. He grabbed the cheapest pack, his stomach rumbling a protest against the meager choice. Next, the pasta aisle, an overwhelming expanse of shapes and sizes. He bypassed the fancy fusilli and expensive fettuccine, settling for the store-brand spaghetti, its plastic bag feeling flimsy in his hand. A sudden, sharp pain flared in his temple. It wasn't a headache, not exactly, more like a pressure building, accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible ringing in his ears. He blinked, shaking his head, trying to dislodge the strange sensation. It passed as quickly as it came, leaving a faint unease in its wake. He moved on to the dairy section, the chill of the refrigerated cases doing little to cool the strange prickle on his skin. He needed milk, the cheapest gallon he could find. As he reached for a jug, a hand, unexpectedly warm, brushed against his. He looked up, startled. Standing beside him was an older woman, her silver hair pulled back neatly, her eyes, a startling shade of green, crinkling at the corners. She offered a soft smile. "Excuse me, dear. Didn't see you there." Leo mumbled an apology, feeling a flush creep up his neck. There was something familiar about her, a warmth that transcended the sterile environment of the store. He couldn't quite place it. "Just looking for some milk," she added, her voice a gentle lilt. "Sometimes these aisles feel like a maze, don't they?" Leo nodded, still feeling that faint, almost forgotten sense of recognition. He picked up his milk, the gallon feeling heavier than usual. The strange pressure in his head returned, more insistent this time, pulsing with a dull rhythm. He needed to get out of here. He quickly collected his remaining items, a cheap can of crushed tomatoes, a loaf of discount bread. As he approached the checkout, he saw her again, in the line next to his. The older woman. She glanced at him, her green eyes widening slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing across her face. He averted his gaze, the coins in his pocket feeling like a lead weight. He just wanted to pay and leave. The cashier, a young man with tired eyes, began to scan his items. Leo reached for his coin purse, his fingers fumbling with the clasp. The weight in his head intensified, and a wave of nausea washed over him. He felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to run. Jingling at the checkout. The fluorescent hum of the grocery store seemed to amplify the silence as Liam approached the checkout. His cart, containing a week's worth of ramen, instant coffee, and the occasional discounted fruit, felt lighter than his wallet. He began unloading, each item a silent testament to his meticulous budgeting. The young cashier, Sarah, with her bright green apron and a name tag that read, "Sarah, Trainee," offered a polite, if somewhat nervous, smile. "Just these today?" she asked, her voice a little too high-pitched. She scanned the first packet of noodles, the familiar beep cutting through the air. Liam nodded, a knot forming in his stomach. This was the moment of truth. He'd carefully counted out the coins, each one a relic of forgotten couch cushions and dusty pockets, and he hoped desperately he hadn't miscalculated. As the final item was scanned, a bruised apple that had been 50% off, Sarah announced the total. "That'll be £17 and 12 pence, please." Liam reached into his pocket, pulling out a handful of silver and copper. The metallic clang against the plastic counter seemed impossibly loud. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, her smile faltering as she saw the sheer volume of coinage. She began to count, her fingers moving slowly, meticulously. The line behind Liam, initially short, was growing. A woman with an overflowing cart and a scowl began to tap her foot impatiently. The rhythmic clink, clink, clink of coins filled the air. Liam felt a blush creep up his neck. He wished the floor would open up and swallow him whole. Sarah, however, remained focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up, a tentative smile returning. "Looks like you're just a little short, actually. £17 and 3 pence. Do you have 9 more pence?" Liam's heart sank. 9 pence. The universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. He fumbled through his other pocket, producing only a single, lint-covered button. He could feel the stares of the people behind him, their unspoken judgments burning into his skin. He opened his mouth to apologize, to explain, to offer to put something back, when a deep, resonant voice cut through the awkward silence. "Here, I've got it." Liam spun around. Standing directly behind him, with an expression of polite amusement, was Mr. Harrison, his art history professor. Mr. Harrison, impeccably dressed as always, held out a crisp 10-pence coin. Sarah, upon seeing him, froze, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and reverence. Her hand, which had been reaching for the coin, hesitated. The general murmur of the queue instantly died down. "Mr. Harrison." Sarah stammered, her cheeks flushing a deep crimson. The 10-pence coin lay glinting on the counter, a beacon of unexpected salvation. The long wait. The scent of stale coffee and disinfectant clung to Elias's clothes, a phantom reminder of the endless hours he'd spent in the hospital's sterile waiting room. The plastic chair dug into his lower back, a dull ache that had become a constant companion. Sunlight, weak and watery, filtered through the grimy window, doing little to dispel the gloom. He'd lost track of the days, of the hours. Time had ceased to be a linear progression and had become a thick, viscous goo, each moment stretching into an eternity. Across from him, an elderly woman in a floral dress snored softly, her head lolling to one side. A young man, probably a student, hunched over a textbook, occasionally running a hand through his disheveled hair. Everyone here was waiting for something, for someone. A universal, unspoken anxiety hummed beneath the surface of the quiet room. Elias's phone lay heavy in his palm, its screen dark. He'd called his sister, Maria, countless times, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly strained. She hadn't picked up since he'd told her about their mother's collapse. His father, stoic and uncommunicative as ever, had merely grunted when Elias offered to bring him a change of clothes. Elias knew it was his own responsibility now, the heavy weight of it settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. He was the eldest, the one who had to hold it all together. A nurse, her steps brisk, emerged from the double doors leading to the ICU. Elias's heart lurched, a frantic bird trapped in his chest. He pushed himself to his feet, the sudden movement sending a jolt of pain up his spine. The nurse, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, paused, scanning the room. Her gaze met his, and a flicker of something, pity, resignation, crossed her face. Elias braced himself. He could feel the words coming, the pronouncement that would cleave his life into a before and an after. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Mr. Vance?" she asked, her voice soft. He nodded, unable to speak. His hands clenched into fists, the knuckles white. He could hear the frantic drumming of his own pulse in his ears. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing in on him. He felt every pair of eyes in the waiting room on him, sharing in his moment of impending judgment. The nurse gestured towards a small consultation room. "The doctor would like to speak with you." Every muscle in Elias's body screamed for him to run, to turn and flee this place, this terrible news that was surely waiting for him behind that closed door. But he couldn't. He was his mother's son, and he had to know. He took a shaky breath and followed her, the scent of antiseptic suddenly overpowering. The long wait was finally over, and the true battle was about to begin. Not quite enough. The scent of stale coffee and desperation clung to Liam as he fumbled with the worn leather pouch. His fingers, calloused from countless shifts at the diner, brushed against the cold, smooth metal within. He'd counted them a dozen times already, each clink a tiny drumbeat against his fading hope. $347.83, all in coins. The exact amount for his overdue tuition, according to the bursar's email. He pushed open the heavy oak door of the university's financial aid office, the squeal of hinges echoing in the hushed corridor. Mrs. Gable, a woman whose smile lines seemed permanently etched into a polite grimace, looked up from her computer. Her gaze flickered from his face to the lumpy outline of the coin pouch in his hand. "Liam, good to see you," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Hear about your balance, I presume?" "Yes, Mrs. Gable. I have it all here." He set the pouch on her pristine desk, the weight thudding softly. He watched her expression, anticipating the familiar weariness that always accompanied dealing with his unconventional payments. She untied the drawstring, her movements precise. The coins spilled out onto a small, felt-lined tray. Copper, silver, and gold-hued metal shimmered under the fluorescent lights. Mrs. Gable picked up a small, mechanical counter and began feeding the coins, one by one, into its slot. The rhythmic whirring filled the silence, punctuated by the occasional clang of a dime hitting the bottom of the tray. Liam leaned forward, his knuckles white against the desk's edge. He pictured the email, the precise numbers. It had to be enough. The counter stopped. Mrs. Gable peered at the small digital display, then back at the pile of remaining coins. Her polite grimace tightened. "Liam," she began, her voice softer now, "it appears there's a discrepancy." His heart hammered against his ribs. What do you mean?" "The total here is $346.93. You're 90 cents short." She pointed to the display with a perfectly manicured finger. The air in the office grew thick, heavy with the weight of that missing 90 cents. 90 cents. It was a joke, a cruel twist of fate. Liam stared at the remaining handful of coins on the tray, his mind racing. He'd sacrificed sleep, skipped meals, worked every available hour. All for this. He felt a hot flush creep up his neck. Just then, a distinguished voice from the doorway cut through the sudden silence. "Is there a problem here, Mrs. Gable?" Liam froze. He knew that voice. A deep, resonant baritone that commanded attention. He turned slowly, dread coiling in his stomach. Standing there, impeccably dressed, a faint scent of expensive cologne preceding him, was Mr. Harrison, the university's dean of admissions. And Liam's father. Mr. Harrison's eyes, usually sharp and assessing, widened slightly as they landed on the scattered coins and then on Liam's face. The polite smile he usually wore for staff vanished, replaced by a look Liam couldn't quite decipher, a mixture of surprise, concern, and something else, something akin to disappointment. The truth, in all its embarrassing, coin-laden glory, was laid bare. A familiar voice. The scent of stale coffee and disinfectant clung to Elias as he pushed through the revolving doors of the university's main administration building. The afternoon sun, usually a cheerful presence, felt more like a spotlight highlighting his worn jeans and the faint tremor in his hands. He clutched the crumpled envelope, the one containing the notice of his outstanding tuition, as if it were a fragile bird. His appointment with financial aid was in 15 minutes, and a cold dread was settling deep in his stomach. Inside, the grand hall echoed with the muted clatter of keyboards and the low hum of student chatter. Elias navigated the labyrinthine corridors, each poster for upcoming events or student success stories feeling like a taunt. He found the financial aid office tucked away in a quiet corner, its frosted glass door offering no glimpse of the decisions being made within. A nervous knot tightened in his chest. This was it. The moment of truth. He pushed the door open to a surprisingly quiet waiting area. Only one other person was there, seated with their back to him, hunched over a phone. Elias hesitated, then shuffled to an empty chair, his worn backpack scraping softly against the polished floor. He pulled out his own phone, ostensibly to check messages, but his gaze kept darting to the other occupant. There was something familiar about the set of their shoulders, the way their dark hair fell, even the slight tilt of their head. Then, a low murmur broke the silence. The person on the phone sighed, a soft, exasperated sound, and then spoke. "No, Mom, I told you, I'm handling it. It's just a delay." The voice, though hushed and tinged with frustration, hit Elias like a physical blow. His breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be. The person shifted, turning slightly, and the afternoon light from the window caught their profile. Elias's world seemed to tilt. The sharp line of her jaw, the way her brow furrowed in concentration, it was undeniable. Amelia. His Amelia. The girl he hadn't seen, hadn't spoken to, since that disastrous final argument almost a year ago. Her eyes, still the same deep hazel he remembered, flicked up from her phone, scanning the waiting room. They landed on Elias, and for a split second, a flicker of something unreadable, shock, perhaps, or disbelief, crossed her face. The phone slipped slightly in her grasp. The air in the room thickened, suddenly charged with unspoken history. The silence stretched, deafening. Elias felt the blood drain from his face, his own financial woes momentarily eclipsed by the unexpected, jarring sight of her. The tuition notice in his hand suddenly felt like a trivial scrap of paper. The president's kindness. The Oval Office, usually a bastion of controlled chaos, felt unusually still. Sunlight, filtered through the bulletproof glass, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air. President Thompson, a man whose face bore the etched lines of decades spent navigating political storms, leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. Across from him, a young aide, barely out of college, clutched a tablet, her knuckles white. So, a student, struggling to pay for groceries, and the only person who can help is, me? Thompson's voice was a low rumble, devoid of judgment but tinged with genuine surprise. Sir, the security detail tracked the donor. He insisted on anonymity, but his financial advisor made an offhand comment about his unique philanthropy. It seems he finds great satisfaction in aiding those in genuine need, especially when it involves a touch of the dramatic. The aide shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware of the absurdity of the situation. Thompson let out a soft chuckle. Dramatic, indeed. Piles of coins, a stunned cashier. This certainly isn't your typical campaign donation. He steepled his fingers, his gaze drifting to a framed photograph of his own children on his desk. He remembered the lean years, the compromises, the constant worry. A flicker of empathy crossed his face. All right. Arrange a meeting. Not in here, not with all the pomp and circumstance. Something quieter. And keep the press out of it. This isn't about me, it's about a young man who deserves a break. Days later, Mark found himself ushered into a discreet side entrance of a stately building he couldn't quite place. The air inside smelled faintly of old leather and lemon polish. A kind-faced woman in a sensible suit led him down a short hallway to a room that looked more like a comfortable study than a government office. A large, worn armchair sat by a bay window overlooking a manicured garden. And in that armchair, reading a thick book, sat President Thompson. Mark's breath hitched. He'd seen the man on television countless times, but in person, without the filter of the screen, he seemed more human. Thompson looked up, a warm smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. Mark, please, sit. No need for formalities here. He gestured to a smaller, equally comfortable chair opposite him. I heard about your grocery incident. And the generous, if unconventional, assistance you received. Mark, still reeling from the shock of being in the same room as the president, managed a shaky, yes, sir. It was surreal. Thompson chuckled again, a genuine, hearty sound. Surreal is an understatement. But it sparked an idea. You see, Mark, I believe in helping those who are working hard, even when life throws curveballs. And your story, well, it resonated. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. I want to offer you an opportunity. An internship with my policy research team. It's paid, of course. And it comes with a full scholarship to finish your degree. No strings attached, other than your best effort. Mark stared, speechless. The air in the room suddenly felt lighter, the scent of lemon polish replaced by a faint, hopeful warmth. A lump formed in his throat. He had come here expecting a reprimand, perhaps a stern lecture about the impropriety of it all. Instead, he was being offered a lifeline, a chance to not just survive, but to truly thrive. The weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying, the crushing burden of debt and uncertainty, began to lift, leaving him feeling dizzy with relief. More than just groceries. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket hummed, casting a sterile glow on the aisles. Leo pushed a wobbly cart, its single rebellious wheel squeaking a rhythm that grated on his nerves. He clutched the crumpled shopping list in his hand, a testament to his dwindling funds and the meticulous planning required to stretch every dollar. Instant noodles, the cheapest bread, and a solitary apple, a treat, almost, were the only items he could justify. He navigated past a towering display of artisanal cheeses, their rich, earthy scent a cruel reminder of meals he could only dream of. A pang of something akin to resentment, but mostly just exhaustion, tightened in his chest. He was so tired of this constant calculation, this never-ending tightrope walk between hunger and solvency. His gaze drifted to a young couple laughing as they loaded organic vegetables into their cart, their ease a stark contrast to his own internal struggle. As he reached for a package of ramen, a familiar voice cut through the mundane supermarket din. "Leo? Is that really you?" He froze, his hand hovering over the bright yellow packaging. He knew that voice. A cold dread seeped into his bones, far colder than the refrigerated section he stood beside. Slowly, he turned. Standing there, a half-smile playing on her lips, was Cassandra. Her auburn hair, usually a vibrant cascade, was pulled back in a chic ponytail. She wore a tailored blazer that probably cost more than his entire month's rent, and her eyes, once sparkling with shared dreams and late-night study sessions, now held a guarded curiosity. "Cassandra," he managed, his voice a dry whisper. The ramen packet suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "What a surprise," she said, her tone a little too bright, a little too casual. She glanced at his nearly empty cart, then back at him, her smile faltering slightly. "Still battling the books, I see." "Something like that," he mumbled, wishing the floor would swallow him whole. The last thing he wanted was for Cassandra, the epitome of the life he'd once envisioned for himself, to see him like this. The weight of his humble purchases, the threadbare cuff of his jacket, the faint scent of stale coffee clinging to his clothes, it all felt magnified under her polished gaze. He braced himself for the inevitable awkward questions, the pity he didn't want, the unspoken comparison to the glittering future she had undoubtedly secured. This was more than just groceries, it was a public display of his current reality. "Well," she said, her voice softening, a hint of genuine concern flickering in her eyes. "It's good to see you, Leo." He offered a weak nod, his grip tightening on the cart handle. The squeak seemed louder now, a mocking accompaniment to his discomfort. A new beginning. The lingering ghost of stale coffee and futile shifts still clung to Liam, a phantom whisper of the diner's endless metallic chimes. Now, a starkly different scent occupied his senses, the crisp, almost medicinal tang of antiseptic, undercut by an earthy sweetness, reminiscent of deep, damp soil after a spring downpour. He stood in the gleaming, almost austere corridor of a private clinic, the polished linoleum mirroring the soft, diffused illumination. Dr. Eris Thorne, his impeccably tailored suit exuding an understated authority, gestured towards a substantial oak door. "He's stable, Liam," Thorne's voice, a low and calming resonance, assured him. "The initial scans confirmed our suspicions, but intervention was timely. He's resting, yet he's awake. And, he's expecting you." A sudden, unwelcome clenching tightened Liam's gut. Expecting him. The phrase echoed with an unexpected gravity. He pushed the door open, it swung silently inward, revealing a room bathed in the gentle glow of a bedside lamp. Elias, looking fragile and pale against a stack of pillows, lay still. His eyes, usually sharp and discerning, now held a vulnerability Liam seldom witnessed. A slender foreline snaked into his arm. Despite the starkness of the hospital gown, an intrinsic, almost regal bearing remained. He regarded Liam, a faint smile touching his lips. "Took you long enough, lad," Elias rasped, his voice a shade weaker than Liam remembered. Liam approached the bed, a torrent of questions battling a sudden surge of protectiveness. "You terrified me, Elias." What happened?" Elias sighed, a shallow, fleeting sound. "An old adversary, Liam. One I believed long vanquished. My heart, it seems, possesses a memory all its own. But we'll delve into that later. For now, the coins. Were they delivered? Liam nodded, recalling the cashier's stunned expression, the sudden, hushed reverence that had filled the air. They were. The bank manager, he recognized them. He knew their provenance. A flicker of something unreadable, perhaps pride, or a quiet relief, crossed Elias's features. Good. That means the message found its mark. The gears are beginning to turn. He paused, his gaze sharpening slightly. But there's more, isn't there? You wouldn't be here simply for a health update. Liam hesitated, the bank manager's warning echoing in his mind. He said there's a history. A legacy. And that I'm now entangled in it. He also mentioned, protection. And peril. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, a soft exhalation escaping him. As I surmised. The game has commenced. And you, Liam, are no longer merely a piece on the board. You are the pivot. He opened his eyes, a familiar spark returning. Are you prepared to truly grasp the currents you've stepped into? The air in the room seemed to thicken, laden with unspoken truths. Liam gazed at the man who had, in a mere matter of weeks, upended his entire world. He thought of the ceaseless grind, the dead-end jobs, the gnawing unease of his past. He thought of the coins, heavy and ancient, and the undeniable sense of purpose they had ignited within him. Yes, Liam affirmed, his voice resolute, unyielding. I'm ready.